Welcome to DMs Who Vape on Couches at Undisclosed Locations. I'm Cody, this is Josh, and this is Curse 20. This is part 2. How do you prep a module / adventure?
Yeah, so before we're kind of talking about how our experiences and everyone's experiences DMs are different and how they go through different obstacles and different scenarios and whatnot. Um, I thought it'd be fun kind of talk about how every person prepares their story. And I mean, obviously there's a lot of parts to it, location, NPCs, integrating players, all that
hmm
stuff. I figured how you choose a module, like why you chose that module and what came to go about it and like how you made it yours or
hmm
what brought you to it. I figured that'd be a good place to go versus my
Yeah,
experience in it,
yeah,
you know?
um,
Um,
yeah. I think that's a great idea.
so yeah, at least in my experience, just because I was a kind of a newer player, as I mentioned in the earlier video,
Right.
uh, with a bunch of newer players, I picked the book just because I heard it had good potential.
Okay.
So I picked Storm King's Thunder and I read the whole book, which, I would advise if you're going to prepare a big campaign
Yeah.
scenario. It's like, of course, you kind of want to learn the story as you go with the players, but you're going to want to know where things are going, where things are building.
I'm gonna agree with you on that one 100%. I also read my whole book before I had my session 0, and then I think I've read it again 2 or 3 times just to try to know what I'm planning towards.
I didn't read every item, every single location, but every adventure, how this is supposed to be going
hmm
and whatnot to get a better understanding. And that's where I found out how great of a book Storm Kings is, but also how massive it is and how it is
It's
not
big.
linear at all. And it gives you 1,000 open endings and it gives you awesome places, location, and then just kind of, it's like, it offered like a great big sandbox and then it was like out of voice sport. So that was my set of challenges, especially after my only experience before that was a one shot where I had a very concise story and I could
Right.
flavor little items or magic certain ways.
Right.
I had to out of nowhere be like, oh, I have to write a, I have to take the framework for a big story, and I don't know, maybe people feel it differently, but
hmm
I felt like there was a lot of disconnect a little bit in the story. A lot of the good elements that I would have liked in the story were a little lacking, like
hmm
recurring villains. Like for example, like Strahd has a. That's why was excited to play your campaign. Strahd is a recurring villain you get to see interact with. That was a problem. Understanding how to connect and make the players feel part of the world. I thought was kind of a problem. It gave a lot of good factions and awesome places and scenarios. I kept reading it and being like, it's and going back to my first experience, why would my character care?
hmm
I kept playing the game when my very first game as a player, and I would be like, why would my character do this? And I would try to play things according so. And there's
hmm
moments that were good, and then other moments that I would try and it would still wouldn't make sense. Not because the roles were bad, it just felt a little disconnect. So I didn't want that experience for all the new players.
hmm
So that was one of the main things I was trying to focus on the story initially was how do I link all those things together so everyone's choices not only feel that they matter but also so they can feel even if they're failing they can feel like a true part of the world kind of thing.
Right.
So that was my set of scenarios. First was kind of taking this big wild west of kind of a module and being like, let's turn it into a little more linear,
hmm
a little more my flavor, and also just kind of take all those building blocks and connect the dots kind of thing.
So, can I ask you a question? What percentage of when we play is from the book, and what percentage is written off of
Oh,
your head?
I mean, at this point with
Like roughly,
Storm Kings, at this point, I mean, I've used other characters and big NPCs, but with the storyline, like if you guys someone was to tell you about the Storm Kings they played and you compared it to your guys' experience, it would be incredibly different,
Wow.
like incredibly, like probably 65-70% at this point
hmm
is my stuff. If I'm being honest, a
Wow.
lot of the initial stuff was
Uh,
more, but getting closer to the end, that was all stuff like the Flying Castle location, Tortania, all that was
right.
done. Um, the Fire Giant dungeon, that one I have a little regret because the one dungeon in the book is awesome, and you could almost build a whole campaign, mini campaign, just in that dungeon, honestly. but that one's different. Uh, like all the except locations and places very similar,
Hmm.
but the rest of the storyline towards the end has been mostly it's aligned with the story template, but I've given like all the motivations for the characters, all those inner stuff
Hmm.
that added a little dimension, I've added to them.
Wow.
You know what I mean? Like the motive for Imrith, the motive for the cloud giants, all that stuff I ended up adding to give the world more immersion, kind of thing,
Wow.
because I felt like the template was so wild. So yeah, my obstacles mostly came from seeing such a wild west of a book, and then trying to like tame it and adapt it to what I thought would be a good story, your guys' needs and whatnot.
So was there at any
So
point of changing modules in your head? Like, man, I should just make this easier on myself and we should just play
oh,
this.
there was definitely the thoughts. There was definitely the thoughts, but I was
Okay.
committed to it, and I was just like, no, no, like we have a good players, we have a bunch of stuff. We just need to keep going at it. I was like,
Yeah.
I honestly, it was a lot of sheer belief, just in like, no, this is gonna happen, and we're gonna
Yeah.
write something cool and make something cool happen.
Yeah. And
I
that
did
was
have to
one
trim the fat.
session away from
I
being
know,
done, dude.
I know. I did have to trim some fats and things like that, but it's yeah, it's been great. It's been great.
Wow.
But yeah, I remember when I first started trying to look at a lot of videos and stuff recommending how to tie things in. There's a lot of great ideas, some good recommendations, but none of them were very much my favorite. Nothing wrong, just I don't know.
Yeah.
So my whole problem, I had to kind of write a story on top of a story.
Yeah.
I don't know, like that's why I've looked at other modules. For example, like I looked at Stroud and I was like, man, it already has a lot of great elements that I feel like I didn't have to already incorporate. You just get to
Yeah.
flavor and you know
Yeah.
spice yourself kind of thing.
S-
So, seeing your experience, how's
s-
that been? Because Mike said mine was like looking at these templates and then being like, attaboy. But I didn't have to think about all the cool locations and stuff. It was because there were so many cool things. I was like, oh, okay. Like the big sandbox, big sandbox.
Right. Mine, I think I had the exact opposite. My issue does not come into filling in gaps.
Hmm.
My issue is there are no gaps to fill. So how do I add characters' backstories? How do I add personal reasons for you to be there? Where can I add elements that I thought of that I want to try? Because I'll tell you, like Strahd, it can if you just do a little pushing on your players, you can play that book basically from chapter one to the end. It's you could almost read it as a story. There's I mean, if you're watching this, you probably know a little bit about how modules work. It breaks down every area really well, and every time you read a new chapter, there's a clear like drop off from the old chapter and pick up to the new chapter. Like you
Hmm.
could almost just read that book.
Hmm.
At least I thought so from beginning to end, and run a progressing story from beginning to end in that
Hmm.
story, right? And it would be very minimal work just to like reach into the next chapter to give you a plot hook to move on to the next area. And you could probably, in my opinion,
Hmm.
play Strahd in 6 months if you just played it by the books.
Yeah.
So how do my exact opposite was like I want to play, and I chose Strahd because when I first started getting like into like D&D and started watching like TTRPG channels on YouTube and like following them on TikTok, it was like Strahd and Vecna were the two best bad guys. Strahd and Vecna. And I'm like,
Iconic.
yeah, iconic, right? And then you have like the first great arc of Critical Role where they're killing vampires for Percy, and I'm like, dude, vampires are just cool creatures to play, like, right? So I was like, when we had that talk where everybody was like, hey, I want to start running, and then I started looking into like quote unquote easiest adventures to run, and I was like, I've only DM'd like 4 times, right? Like I'm gonna start running for this group of like 4 to 5 people. I was kind of being a little cheaty, I think, and I was like, I'm gonna try to find the easiest adventure. And so all those factors combined, I'm like, dude, Strahd is the perfect fit. Easy bad guy, easy story, fun, fun villain, right? And then I started reading the book, and I'm
Hmm.
like, man, in my opinion, there's not a lot of wiggle room for
Hmm.
backstories and role playing and stuff like that. Like, you could just
Well, I feel like maybe a lot of role playing character, but maybe not role play decisions. Maybe.
kind of, it'd be very easy to railroad you guys
Okay.
and not let in my, again, I keep saying my opinion, but like,
I don't know the ending of the book. I haven't
yeah.
played it or anything, so I'm
So
from my
you'll have to read
perspective.
it when we're done,
Yeah.
just so that you like understand what I'm talking
Yes.
about, the how linear is. So, and I have it on our
Mm-hmm.
So but so I was like, so when I started reading into it, like I was like, I don't want this to feel like they're playing through like a video game, right? And so I was like, how do I do this? And that's where my challenges have come in, is really trying to, I can stretch this out and add
Mm-hmm.
stuff here. Oh, I can add a faction here, and it still like I've added a whole new.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to tell you which one, but I've added like one or two factions, two so far, to this world that aren't in the book at all. But I'm like, oh, but it makes perfect sense that I could put, and then that gives me now more role playing abilities for like bad guys. I had like certain type of bad guys I wanted to throw at you, and I'm like, I created this faction, and now I could use this type of bad guy for that faction, right?
That makes sense, and like it's funny you say that. Like that's some of the things I did in my story. So like since I had such a big sandbox of things,
Right.
my scenario, there was a couple things that they were just featured lightly, and I was like, for example, you get out of the temple in the normal Storm Kings. Sorry, spoilers, but and it says you're just saved by a ship of dragon cultist pirates on a flying ship, and I just sat there and was like, hold up, you're telling me in this world there's flying ships? And that immediately just set off a bomb, and I was like, no, 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 no. Like I know new mechanics. There's going to be flying seaport. There's going to be flying ports everywhere. You're telling me there's sky pirates? That means there's sky ports. There's sky cities. There's what I mean. They like it just it opened a whole set of dimensions for my world.
Wow.
And I remember talking to one of our players, like, "What do you think about Sky Pirates?" To him, his immediate thing was, "That sounds awesome." So I immediately thought about it and was like, "That's okay. I'm gonna add that dimension to my world too," kind of thing. So like that's been the fun part about it. I can see sometimes like, "Oh, I can just add that," and I try to always make it sense within reason of the realm because it's somewhat. I'm not gonna say what is it like. I would say it's high fantasy. I wouldn't say low magic, but
No, you just
not
have to make the right choices to be a high magic, to
yeah.
be involved with the high magic
Just because
people.
we put lower levels,
Yeah.
it's yeah. Just I'd say magic's like medium.
Yeah,
There's
mid
high
magic.
yeah that high level magic is very safeguarded.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been fun to be able to just build that part of the world. But
Hmm.
then that brings the whole set of problems of like how do I connect these dots? Like we didn't even really have a proper session zero, so then it
Yeah.
was like at least with the module, you can be like, hey, we can take these people here and here and here. Here, I had to try to find
Things for
whole
us to
motives for
do.
it to like, for us, you guys to go, for your characters to line. That's why when I built this story in this world that was so much bigger, I first of it thought is I need to build a story for them to become friends and like characters to bond once they're kind of somewhat of a group. I keep dropping events, and that's the main thing. Storm Things gave me was good events and whatnot. So I kept using some of those events in my own and flavor and whatnot to
Hmm.
help your characters and party bond, and then drop on the story of like, oh, actually, you guys were meant to gather. There's a
Right.
prophecy, which there wasn't a book. I just took incredible liberties with. But and at that point, then it was like, now we have a hook to the story. So we almost had like a mini prequel
Wow.
kind of thing within it,
Wow.
and I wanted to have your characters keep using these events and keep bonding and understanding the world. So I ended up using events to progress my story of like, the Giants just started getting shaken and stirring up. So there's not just going to be like all Giants are causing war now. There's a couple It's called the chapter. It's called the rumblings. So you guys made a big concert, bunch of stuff happened in the town. Not gonna get semantics of it, but
Hmm.
a couple of Giants finally came out. Finally started to see attacks. Then you finally started to see glimpses of some of the high magic user giants that there was in the world. And little by little, I figured you guys could start seeing how the world was shaping, and it
Hmm.
wasn't until you guys really hit your prophecy that you understood what you guys were fighting for,
Right.
where this world is starting to turn if things don't go in a certain way. So I would say like the real heavy set of the story didn't really start in the prophecy. Everything until you guys heard that before was kind of like not a prequel, but that intro of building up to it. You know what I mean? Because I
Right.
wanted that natural progression of these guys have to care about each other. They have to believe in that there is a prophecy. It's not just coincidences that are happening. Like it's beyond that at this point.
Right.
Show you how the world works, and then I can release you. Because it was so big, I kind of felt like I had to explain the dynamics of the world, the dynamics of your party, lay all those things out, show
Right.
you potential terrible things that could happen or
Well, dude,
whatnot, and then release the story to you guys.
I remember that prophecy session though. I think it was like a two-part session that we did because it was so
Mm-hmm.
big. It was. I thought you did a great job with that because like I was like, oh, we're just like ended up being a random band. Like I thought you did a really good job of making this all seem like random travelers and adventurers that ended up linking up and having like. And then right in the beginning, you gave us like good like heady reasons to link up, right? Like, okay, now we're gonna go do like try to make some money together, and then
Mm-hmm.
it just snowballed. Now our characters like, well, we've done so much together, we're gonna keep sticking by each other, and then all of a sudden, halfway through the campaign, we learned like, no, there's like even deeper like world shattering things that we're a part of now.
There was a glimpse earlier on, but it was kind of one of those things of like you're told like you're meant for great things, and all your
Yeah,
characters were still kind of not greasy, but like they were like goodish. They were like pretty good
yeah,
guys. They're not bad guys, but still kind of greasy. And then
yeah.
out of nowhere, they're like, "Word,"
Heroes, yeah,
you know. So it was. I wanted to kind of try to help you guys build your
right,
characters into that. If you guys want to do that, if your characters wanted to opt out a different way, we would have played it. But
yeah,
give you the opportunity to build into that because I felt that that was the one thing missing from the story. So
yeah,
that's why I was trying to naturally progress things certain ways and tell the
right,
story through events and plot comes with it and
yeah.
whatnot.
And so like, if I could talk first, like if I could bring up mine, kind of I think we're gonna have kind of different experiences with because of the modules that we picked. Because like mine was like, oh man, there are very clear, obvious plot hooks to put in front of you guys. It is super easy to make it obvious, like this is the next, like this is somebody or the next thing you need to do or talk to, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, well, I should take that back. Sometimes I feel like I put plot hooks in front of people, and I'm like, this is the most obvious, like, and I think I'm like making like I'm making this way too obvious,
Mm-hmm.
and they won't bite on it, and they'll just keep moving on. Like back to my Gray Shit campaign, I feel like okay talking about it because I
Mm-hmm.
don't think we'll ever play that again.
It's okay.
Um,
Rest in
but
peace.
I was trying to get um one of your guys' characters, James's character. He was a druid, and I kept putting these druid people in front of him, and like he knew that he knew them, and I kept having them show up because I wanted him to talk to them, and I was gonna give you guys like a clue to like the true ending of the can of that
Mm-hmm.
little short session. It was a big
Yeah, yeah.
clue on like, oh, maybe not everything is quite as it seems, and he refused to go up and talk to them. And then I
And
was
then
like, how am I actually now going to get this information in front of him? So I started trying to have to like figure out a completely different route. But I'm like, this is an obvious plot hook. Like they keep walking up to you and like waving at you, and you're not talking to them. You keep choosing to do different things, and I'm like, I guess this is just not happening.
that 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 makes sense. And then you have to improvise and do everything on the
Yeah.
fly too. Well, see, on the improvising thing, that's since I've had to like think up of so many things, I guess it's kind of helped my ability to like improvise stuff because
Mm-hmm.
when you guys would bring up stuff in your characters, instantly you guys would bring up characters' motivations or things they would like. I was like, that gives me something, that gives me something, that gives me something. And I would try to like slowly lean things into that, So if your character was like, uh, for example, your character your character said he used to be kind of like a general kind of guy,
Yeah.
and then he let his troops down. I gave you a lot of scenarios where you had extra garrisons to like leave, so you could have redemptive, sad, whatever kind of moments to like help lead in battle too. They've
It
been
was not a.
they have been the most epic troops every time
They keep tying.
mechanically. Like they help you battle mechanically, but they do keep dying, and it does keep adding to your character's sadness and distraughtness.
It's got to do the exact opposite you planned for my character. It's making him feel worse
Oh,
every
it's
time.
well, yeah, yeah, yeah. It's definitely getting more trauma, but he's definitely like fucking kicked ass in battles. I mean, they saved that town if you
Yeah,
think
they
about it.
did. Yeah.
But anyways,
Um.
yeah, I think yeah, I see what you mean. How just it would be a little frustrating, especially since there's not the bigger stuff. How to keep introducing
Right.
hooks. I yeah, I I think the way you ran your NPCs is really great. So maybe see that way too. I don't know,
Yeah.
but I think in your experience, I think that was a great campaign for you because I think some of the best things you do is the role play and getting into character. So I feel like you could play villains a little better than I can. I feel like I can help lay out the world a little better, but sometimes I'm not feeling too role play-ish in my way. I can, I can do like the lowercase stuff,
Right.
just not the uppercase stuff,
Yeah.
And yeah, I just feel like that was a good campaign that fit you naturally really well because I knew you could take that role play part into villains and your NPCs really well. So I just thought that when I saw you pick that one, I was like, yeah, that one. It made sense because it was really primed for you, what I thought you could have as a player. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
gave you the best scenario to not get overwhelmed.
Yeah. Yeah. So, another question I have for you is, so why didn't you just choose to write your own campaign from scratch? Because like I've heard that
Oh,
it's easier to start everything from scratch than it is to try to
I
play
could
a
have, but
world.
we already started, and I had motives for factions and whatnot, and I had loose ideas.
Mm-hmm.
But I kind of, since we focused on smaller adventures at first, it
Right.
gave me time to keep taking these ideas and elaborating on them.
Okay.
So like I kept thinking like, why would this dragon have a connection to these guys? Okay, they are connected, they are working, but why? And then I kept taking while you guys were doing that, I kept writing bigger stuff on the back end and elaborating those details and really fine tuning them.
Mm-hmm.
The connections were there, or like I already made them or took them from the book and elaborated on them, but I just kept elaborating on them. And since we had much lower world building adventures at first, like
Mm-hmm.
saving kids, saving a town and whatnot,
Right.
I was able to kind of not push it back, but just kind of do those things while I was running the other
Right.
things. Um,
Yeah.
it was kind of, I mean, to be honest, for it to make sense, it's kind of funny that they wrote the Gloria Giants book. Kind of tells a little bit of prequel about the
Mm-hmm.
Giants and the extra classes. I would have loved to have that content,
Before you start,
before
right.
it dropped like a year and a half after we started playing. And I was literally sitting there thinking, like, no, I wrote a whole prequel because I had to write how Giant Society collapsed. I wrote a whole society how like
Mm-hmm.
the villain used to work for a giant society because it was a dragon. Like I wrote a whole prequel. Like, you could have played the whole campaign prequel beforehand,
Mm-hmm.
and then you play this. You
Wow.
know what I mean? It's like I remember sitting there building this thing, and I'm a big fan of Elden Ring,
Yeah.
and I was thinking of and George R. R. Martin, and I was sitting there playing the game, and I was finally had the thought of like, damn it, I'm gonna have to do something like this. I'm gonna have to write a whole story, make things break and things happen, and then there's the game. Because with just how I wanted to build things and give dimension to characters, I was like, yeah, there's going to be so many things that they have that had to happen for the world to be in the state it is. Because like you see, there's really high magic, but some of it's like old magic or like
Yeah.
you know what I mean, like lost magic at times too.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I by adding the notes and keep connecting factions, I know I ended up writing pretty much a whole prequel to
Wow.
these campaigns.
So wait, how would you give advice on choosing a module or writing your own campaign?
So I would just say choose something you're most comfortable with, whatever things you like. So everything I incorporate into World just came off the elements of fantasy and things that I thought my players would enjoy. And just whatever you feel comfortable, roll with it. Make sure your players and
Mm-hmm.
everyone else is in accordance, and just that'll help set up the scene for the rest of it.
Yeah.
My story is not better than your story. No one's story is better than others. It's just what you want to go with it. So, yeah.
Right. And if I could add anything, it would be just play something that you think you're going to be able to be comfortable playing for a long period of time. This has been Curse 20. Catch us next time. Hi, everyone. Thank you for watching another episode of Curse 20. Please remember to like and subscribe and hit that bell button to keep up to date with future videos. Also, keep a lookout for our future Twitch channel. Have a good night and happy rolling.